On the day I was struggling the most, my girlfriend left me. My name is Jason Ward. I'll never forget the look in her eyes when she left me. Not pity, not anger, just cold detachment. Trust me, you'll regret skipping the story. So before you sit back and listen, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to Ethan's Way. Now get in the mood to listen to this story because it might be the ultimate sweet revenge. I had exactly $6.27 in my checking account the morning Amelia left me. Rent was 2 weeks late, my fridge had half a carton of eggs, and my phone screen was cracked to the point I could barely read my notifications. But even then, even in that moment of humiliation, I didn't expect her to go. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, her designer coat still on, as if she couldn't wait to be anywhere else. "You don't have a plan," she said. "You keep saying things will turn around, but it's been months, Jason." "I'm trying," I whispered, ashamed of how small my voice sounded. "I didn't sign up for this kind of life. You had potential once, but potential doesn't pay bills, or take me out, or even make me feel safe." I watched her walk to the door. Her heels clicked across the wooden floor like punctuation marks on the end of our story. I didn't chase her. I didn't beg, but not because I didn't care. I just didn't have the strength. When the door closed, I sat down at the kitchen table and stared at my reflection in the window. Unshaven, hollow-eyed, a ghost of who I once was. The worst part wasn't that she left. The worst part was the timing. That morning, I had just found out the company I was freelancing for had rejected my proposal for the third time. It was my last hope. I had stayed up all night revising it, hoping for a miracle. All I got was a polite rejection email that felt like a punch to the gut. And then Amelia, the only person I thought would stick by me. Gone. That night, I curled up on the worn-out couch with a blanket that smelled like defeat. My stomach growled, but I ignored it. I stared at the ceiling and tried to breathe without crying. What hurt the most wasn't even the breakup. It was the final confirmation that I was truly alone. I tried calling my mom that night. She didn't pick up. My dad had never been around. I texted a couple friends, nothing back. People had started avoiding me months ago when I lost my full-time job and started doing food deliveries just to scrape by. No one wants to be around the guy who reminds them of failure. Amelia's words rang in my ears as I drifted off to sleep. "You keep saying things will turn around. You had potential once. She wasn't wrong. I used to be something. Not someone not yet, but something that looked like a future." In college, I was the guy with the big ideas. I'd built a prototype app that almost got seed funding. Everyone thought I'd be the next big thing. But when the investor ghosted and my co-founder bailed, it all crumbled. The tech world doesn't care how smart you are if you're not lucky you're roadkill. I told Amelia it was just a detour. She waited for a while. But as the weeks turned into months, her support turned into sighs, then silence. Then finally, I didn't sign up for this. The next morning, I forced myself to get up before 7. I opened all the windows to let some light in. The apartment felt colder without her things, her perfume, her framed art, even her coffee mugs were gone. I sat down and made a list. 1. Find work. 2. Pay rent somehow. 3. Eat more than one real meal a day. 4. Build something again, anything. It looked pathetic, but writing it down helped. That afternoon, I applied to every delivery gig I could find, food packages, dog food, whatever. I borrowed my cousin's bike to save on gas. I downloaded survey apps posted on Reddit offering freelance work. I even cleaned out my closet and sold clothes I hadn't worn in 2 years. It wasn't survival, it was war. Every night I came home with sore legs, blistered feet, and a brain that felt like it had been wrung out and left to dry. But each delivery, each 5-star review, each $3 tip, it added up. Not just financially, emotionally. I was rebuilding something brick by broken brick. Amelia never texted, not once. Part of me hoped she would, that she'd say she regretted it, that she missed me, but nothing came. And honestly, that silence started to push me harder. I saved screenshots of every tip over $5. I wrote down every milestone. I told myself, this is the part of the movie they skip over, but I won't forget it. Because one day, if I ever made it out, I wanted to remember this pain. Every cold dinner, every second-guessing stare, every minute of being left behind. Because I knew something that she didn't. I wasn't done yet. I used to think there was a limit to how much pride you could lose before you stopped being yourself. But that was before I found myself digging coins out of the couch cushions to afford a single banana at the corner store. Dignity, it turns out, is a luxury, and I couldn't afford it anymore. I wore the same hoodie for 4 days straight, masking the smell with bursts of cheap deodorant. When I delivered food, I smiled with cracked lips and forced cheer. Most customers barely looked at me. Some didn't even open the door. They just grabbed the bag and shut it again like I was a ghost. But there was something that kept me going. The idea that no one knew what I was becoming behind the scenes. Between deliveries, while other riders took breaks or scrolled their phones, I was scribbling on napkins, notes, concepts, app layouts. I had an idea, one I'd put off for months because I didn't think I had the bandwidth, the clarity, or the courage. The irony misery gave me all three. The app would be small at first, a utility simple, clean, useful. Nothing revolutionary, just something people needed but didn't know yet. I kept it close to my chest. I didn't tell anyone, not even the one friend I still texted occasionally. I didn't want another round of Jason, focus on real work, or you're just distracting yourself. Maybe I was. But every night after my delivery shift ended, I sat at my battered laptop and built wireframes. I watched YouTube tutorials with headphones on so my upstairs neighbor wouldn't hear me crying when a bug wouldn't fix. I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have money. What I had was humiliation and a deep festering need to prove Amelia wrong. My old friends had vanished one by one after I lost my job. I used to be in group chats where people shared memes and startup gossip. Now I wasn't even in the background, just gone. And I noticed something. People like Amelia, they don't leave you in the moment you're weak. They leave when they realize you'll stay weak for too long, when your downfall stops being a story and becomes a status. She once said, "I loved you because you made me feel like the future was exciting." I kept hearing that line every time I rode through the cold wind, my fingers numb on the bike handles. So what was I now? A disappointment, a dead end, a guy riding borrowed wheels, dropping off greasy food to people binging Netflix on their plush couches while I got rained on. Still I worked. I didn't rest. I didn't party. I didn't drink. I wrote code like my life depended on it, because it did. One night around 2 a.m. I returned from a double shift and collapsed on my floor. The lock on the window was broken and a breeze kept drifting in. I could see my breath in the air. I stared up at the ceiling and thought, I'm not going to survive this. That same night, I checked my email and saw a message in my spam folder. It was from a small tech accelerator based downtown. I had forgotten I even applied. "We were impressed by your application and would love to discuss your product further." I sat up so fast my back spasmed. I read it again, then again. I whispered the sentence aloud just to hear it out in the air. For the first time in weeks, I felt heat rush to my face. I wanted to tell someone, but there was no one. Amelia wouldn't care. She hadn't texted since she left. My mom had finally responded with a thumbs up emoji to a check-in I sent days ago. My cousin, the one who lent me the bike, was asleep or stoned or both. So I sat there alone, shivering with hope. I cleaned myself up the next morning like I was preparing for war. I shaved, put on the one good shirt I had left, and used a hairbrush for the first time in weeks. I even rubbed a little toothpaste into my worn-out sneakers to make them look less tragic. I showed up early to the meeting, too early. I stood outside the building for 30 minutes rehearsing my pitch. I must have looked ridiculous, a guy pacing outside in a hoodie whispering to himself, hands flailing. But when I walked into that room, something inside me clicked. The panel wasn't big 3 people, but they listened, they asked good questions, and for the first time in a long time, I answered with conviction. I told them my app wasn't flashy. It wasn't built to impress VCs or get hyped on tech blogs. It was built for users, for the people like me, the ones who don't get noticed, who fall through the cracks. When I left the building, I didn't know what would happen, but I knew I had done something important. I hadn't begged anyone. I hadn't faked anything. I showed them who I was, and it felt like maybe that was enough. That night, I skipped my delivery shift. I bought myself a $5 burrito and ate it slowly, savoring every bite like it was the first real food I'd had in months. I didn't know if the app would go anywhere. I didn't know if they'd call me back. But for the first time since Amelia left, I didn't feel like I was drowning. I felt like I was climbing still far from the top, but no longer in the dark. And I promised myself something. If I ever made it to the other side, I wouldn't forget this part. The part where the world looked away. The part where I had to carry my own weight while everyone else moved on. The part where I had no dignity, just direction. People don't always say what they really think, but you can see it in their eyes. And I saw it every single day. The look that said, "You used to be someone. Now look at you." I felt it in the silence when I walked into a room. In the polite good luck messages that didn't sound like encouragement, but like farewell. In the awkward pauses after someone asked me what I was doing these days and I told them I was delivering food learning to code at night, I wasn't even angry, just numb. When Amelia left me, it hurt, but the days that followed showed me something worse, that she was just the first domino. My old college roommate Caleb texted me once out of the blue. Caleb, hey man, saw your LinkedIn. You okay? I didn't know how to answer that. My LinkedIn still listed my old job, the one I got laid off from months ago. I hadn't updated it because I didn't want people to know I was no one. I typed and deleted 3 different replies before settling on me working on something new, just keeping quiet for now. His reply came 10 minutes later. Caleb, that's cool. Hope it works out. That was it. He never messaged again. I wasn't surprised. The truth is, people want to believe in your potential until you make them uncomfortable with how far you've fallen. But while everyone else forgot me, I remembered everything. Every promise Amelia made. Every time she said, I'll support you no matter what. Every time she looked bored when I talked about my app. Every time she scrolled through her phone while I tried to brainstorm. And I remembered the last thing she said to me standing in our kitchen with her bag over her shoulder. Maybe you'll get lucky, but I can't waste my time waiting for that. I burned that sentence into my memory. I repeated it in my head every time I felt like quitting. Because now, every time someone doubted me, it was fuel. I started documenting everything, not on social media. No one needed to know yet. But in a private folder on my laptop, I recorded voice memos every night. Day 42, got rained on during a delivery. Client gave me a $0 tip, came home soaked, but I fixed the calendar bug in the app. Day 59, met with the accelerator team again. They gave me feedback on the UI, said I had potential. Those words meant something. Day 64, slept 3 hours, ate half a sandwich, launched beta testing with 5 users. One of them said it saved them time. That's a win. I listened back to those recordings when I doubted myself. Hearing my own voice push forward reminded me that I wasn't wasting my time. I was building the version of me that no one else could see yet. Still, the rejection wasn't just from strangers, it was family too. My older brother Nate came by once to drop off a jacket Mom sent. Mom says you're not answering her calls. She doesn't call, I said deadpan. He looked around the place like he was touring a crime scene. You really living like this? Yeah, I said, for now. He scoffed. You used to talk about changing the world, man. Now you're scraping by. I'm still working, I said, trying not to flinch. He laughed. Doing what? Delivering fries. I didn't say anything, because if I opened my mouth, I was afraid I'd scream. He left the jacket on the couch and walked out. No hug, no advice, no you'll get through this. Just judgment, just more silence. But not everyone's silence was cruel. A woman named Maya, who used to work in the same co-working space I freelanced in, sent me a message out of nowhere. Maya, hey Jason, I was thinking about that idea you mentioned once. The task syncing app for remote teams. You still working on it? I stared at the screen. Someone remembered. Me. Yeah. Actually, it's live now in beta. She asked to try it out. She was managing a small remote team and needed something lightweight. I sent her the link with shaking fingers. The next day, she messaged again. Maya, we love it. It's simple and it works. That was the first validation I had gotten in months. Not from an investor, not from a stranger, from someone who actually used it. And it reminded me I wasn't crazy. I had something. I just needed to keep going. The breakthrough didn't happen all at once. It came in small wins. 1 user became 3, 3 became 10, then 30. One night I pushed an update at 3 a.m. and collapsed on my bed only to wake up 3 hours later to an email from a small blog asking if they could write about the app. They had seen Maya tweet about it. Suddenly I had momentum. And with that momentum came something else, Amelia's name popping up on my phone screen. I hadn't heard from her in almost 5 months. She hadn't liked any of my social posts. She didn't comment. She didn't even watch my stories I checked. But suddenly, after that blog article went mini viral, and I gained 1,000 users in a week, there she was. Amelia, hey. Saw your name in an article. That's amazing. Proud of you. My stomach dropped. I didn't reply. Not right away. Because I remembered everything. And while the world may have looked down on me before, they weren't going to forget me now. The universe has a strange way of putting people in your path when you least expect it and when you're nearly too broken to notice. I was coming off a triple shift. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in 2 days. My eyes were burning. My back screamed every time I leaned forward on my cousin's busted bike, and the air was so cold my fingertips felt like stone even through my gloves. I was doing a late-night delivery for some expensive sushi downtown, the kind of place where they ask if you want truffle flakes on top and then charge you like it's gold dust. I didn't belong there, and I knew it. The building was slick glass and steel. I could see my reflection distorted in the elevator walls, so a pale, underfed hoodie damp with sweat and mist. I stepped out onto the 70th floor and rang the bell. A man opened the door, maybe mid-40s, lean but strong-looking, like someone who worked out not for vanity, but for discipline. He wore joggers and a plain t-shirt barefoot, but his eyes were sharp. He looked at me, then really looked. "You all right, kid?" he asked, taking the bag. I gave him my usual tight-lipped delivery smile. "Yeah, all good." But he paused. "You look like you've been running from something." I laughed awkwardly. Running towards something, actually. He raised an eyebrow. So. There was something in his voice that didn't feel like small talk. I nodded, then turned to go. I just wanted to finish my shift and go collapse somewhere dark and quiet. But as I walked away, he said, "You building something?" I stopped, turned back slowly. "Why do you ask?" He held up his phone. "You've got developer fingers, calluses, cuts on your nails, and your bike's got a power bank strapped to it. You ride around coding between drops." I blinked. "Yeah, actually I do." He smiled. "I was you once." That's how I met Darren Kane. I didn't know who he was at first, just another tech guy with money and time. But something about him felt grounded, like he hadn't forgotten the days when no one answered his calls. He invited me in, said he had an extra bowl of ramen and hated eating alone. I hesitated. Who invites their food delivery guy to dinner? But I was starving, and curiosity, hunger, and exhaustion overruled my pride. His place was minimalist, the kind of clean that doesn't feel cold. A bookshelf with biographies, a whiteboard covered in diagrams, 3 phones charging on the counter. "You're building an app?" he asked, sliding the ramen across the table. "Yeah. Task management for lean teams. Light Simple integrates with existing workspaces." He nodded. "You have users small beta group, around 50 right now. Early feedback's good. You bootstrapping it alone?" I nodded. "Delivery pays the bills. Nights and early mornings are for code." He let out a long breath and smiled. "That's exactly what I used to say." Turns out, Darren was one of the original engineers behind a productivity suite that exploded during the remote work boom. Sold his shares early but smart. He wasn't rich enough to be on magazine covers, but rich enough to own 2 condos and invest in passion projects. He told me his story, and I told him mine. I didn't sugarcoat it. I talked about Amelia, the rejection, the silence, the shame, the $6 in my bank account, and the nights I skipped dinner just to finish a build. He didn't judge. He just said, "Good? That's the stuff that makes you impossible to kill." Before I left, he said something I'll never forget. "You're not invisible, Jason. You're just in the part of the movie that no one watches, the grind montage. But I see it, and more importantly, you see it." He paused. "If you ever want to talk through scaling or infrastructure, shoot me a message." He handed me a card, plain, just his name and a private email. I didn't even know how to respond. No promises, no contracts, just a moment of real recognition. I walked out of that building with the same broken bike, the same empty wallet, but my chest felt like it had been cracked open and something new had been poured in. That night I barely slept, not from exhaustion, from energy. I stayed up rereading user feedback, cleaning bugs, simplifying UI flows, and adding a new dashboard feature I'd been stuck on for weeks. Everything came to life like my brain had been rewired, and by 7 a.m. I deployed the biggest update since launch. 2 hours later, Maya messaged me. "Maya, this new version game changer. I'm sharing it in some of my Slack groups. Hope that's okay." I told her yes, of course, and thanked her, but my fingers were trembling, because deep down I knew this was the beginning of something. Not a miracle, not a lottery win, just the first real break I'd earned. Amelia still hadn't followed up. Her first message had come and gone, just a "proud of you" thrown into the void, hoping I'd be the one to reach back. But I didn't. Not yet, because the new me. He didn't chase after the past. He chased after what was next. There's a moment somewhere between fear and exhaustion where everything goes quiet. Not peaceful quiet, more like that eerie silence before a storm hits. When you know the next choice you make might define you, might break you, might make you, that's where I was. I sat in front of my laptop, hands hovering above the keyboard, staring at the email from the accelerator team. They had reviewed my beta launch, checked my progress, and said one sentence that felt like a thunderclap. We're ready to invest if you're ready to commit full time. It felt like being handed a sword and asked if I was ready to go to war. They weren't offering millions, just enough seed funding to build without delivering noodles at midnight. But the catch, I had to give up everything else. No more side jobs, no more delivery gigs to fall back on. It was all in or nothing. I thought about it for hours. Could I afford to stop working? No. Could I afford not to take this leap? Also no. Because if I didn't bet on myself now after everything, then when would I clicked reply and wrote 2 words, I'm ready. I called my cousin and told him I'd be returning the bike. He asked if I got a new gig. Something like that, I said. Wish me luck. He laughed. You're the luckiest unlucky guy I know. Maybe he was right. I packed up my things that week, not much. Just a laptop, a worn-out backpack, and a small box of clothes. I moved into a room offered by the accelerator program, bare mattress, white walls, and a desk with just enough space to build the future. And I went to war. Those first few weeks felt like burning alive while running a marathon. The app had promise, but promise means nothing without polish. I ran user interviews, fixed bugs, rewrote documentation, managed data migration, and did customer support myself. One woman messaged me at 3 a.m. about a sync issue. I called her within 5 minutes and walked her through it like I was tech support at Google. She ended the call saying, "Wow, I didn't know the founder actually cared." I smiled even though my eyes were burning from 3 sleepless nights, because I did care, desperately. Darren checked in on me once a week. Launch fast, break smart, he told me. I showed him my new metrics, user retention graphs, and roadmap. He didn't sugarcoat. If something looked weak, he told me. If something felt clunky, he made me prove it wasn't. He didn't baby me. He sharpened me. You're building something real, he said after a late night call. But don't forget, real means sustainable. Make it simple, make it human. By month 2, we hit 5,000 users. I had no marketing team, no paid ads, just word of mouth and sweat. A productivity podcast reached out. They wanted me to talk about my journey. I hesitated, still unsure if I was worthy. But then I remembered no one gets to decide that for me anymore. I went on the show and told the truth about the job loss, about delivering sushi in the rain, about the girl who left when I was nothing, about the version of me that wouldn't die even when it should have. The episode got thousands of plays, and with it, thousands more downloads. That night, Amelia messaged again. Amelia, heard you on a podcast. You sound different, stronger. I'm really happy for you. I stared at that message for a long time. Strong enough now, huh? But I didn't reply. Not yet, because I had one more thing to prove, not to her, not to the world, to myself. A few days later, I stood in front of a room full of investors at a demo event. I had rehearsed my pitch 100 times, but when I stood under the spotlight, I spoke without notes. I used to deliver food on the back of a borrowed bike, I said, murmurs, raised eyebrows. I built this app not from comfort, but from survival, because I saw a problem no one else cared to fix and I had nothing else to lose. I paused, and sometimes that's when the real work begins. The room went still, and then applause, not roaring, not theatrical, just real. And that was enough. A week later, 2 investment offers landed in my inbox. I chose the one that didn't just talk numbers, but saw the mission. I signed the term sheet and sat there alone in the tiny room, with my laptop open staring at the confirmation screen. And for the first time in over a year, I cried. Not from pain, not from loss, from pride. Because I'd bet everything on myself. And I was finally starting to win. Success doesn't come with trumpets or fireworks. Sometimes it creeps in quietly through long hours, small victories, and the discipline of disappearing from the world. And that's exactly what I did. I disappeared, not out of fear, but because I knew that if I stayed accessible, I'd get distracted. And distractions? They were luxuries I couldn't afford. I turned off all notifications, no social media, no texts except for my team. No scrolling, no likes, no temptation to read old messages, especially not hers. I moved into a small co-living space with 2 other founders from the accelerator. We didn't talk much. We didn't party. We barely ate together. But the silence wasn't cold, it was focused. We were all chasing something. My world shrank to four things: sleep code, feedback, and iteration. And it was in that tunnel that I found something even more powerful than motivation momentum. I worked 16 hours a day. I built, tested, broke, and rebuilt. I listened to every user complaint, every bug report, every quiet compliment that came through support chat. I answered emails at 3 a.m. with apologies and patches. I wasn't chasing praise. I was chasing refinement. I wanted the app to feel like an extension of the user's mind, not a product they had to learn, but one that understood them. And people noticed. The daily active users doubled within 2 weeks. We were getting unsolicited reviews on forums and Reddit threads. Maya messaged me again and said she'd recommended the app to a company that handled remote onboarding for freelancers. That company signed on with a pilot plan. I was still living off protein bars and instant noodles, but my user base was growing. Sometimes I'd get the urge to open my old photos, see what my life looked like before. Me and Amelia in the park, me presenting a pitch in college, us laughing at some inside joke I don't remember anymore. But every time I hovered over those folders, I stopped myself, because that guy, he was gone, not dead, just replaced. Darren checked in one evening during a rare lull in my day. "You're quiet," he said over the phone. "Yeah, I have nothing left to prove out loud." He chuckled. "That's when the work gets real." I told him about our metrics: retention at 71% growth, steady churn, manageable. "Now you have to decide," he said, "whether you want to scale fast or scale right." I knew what he meant. There were VCs sniffing around, people who offered money with strings, people who wanted to slap on flashy features and bloat the product for profit. But I didn't build this to be flashy. I built it because I knew what it felt like to be invisible, and I wanted this to be something people needed. So I said no to the noise. I kept building in silence. 3 months in, I finally updated my LinkedIn, not because I needed validation, but because I was proud of where I was. Within a day, I had 60 DMs, people from college, old bosses, acquaintances who once ghosted me. Even my brother Nate sent a text. "Nate, damn, you actually did it." I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so I did neither. I just got back to work. And then came the message I was expecting. Amelia. "Hey, just saw your app featured on Product Hunt. That's incredible. I've been thinking about you." There it was. After 6 months of silence, after walking out when I was broke, tired, and humiliated, she remembered I existed. I stared at the message. Then I muted the conversation. Not blocked, not replied, just muted. Because I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't interested either. The next morning, I opened my window to let in the sunrise. It was the first time in weeks I had taken a real moment to breathe. I looked around my tiny room mattress on the floor, empty coffee mugs, a whiteboard covered in deadlines and ideas. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. Every inch of progress, every user, every line of code was built from the rubble of what she left behind. I didn't post a revenge thread. I didn't make some dramatic speech online. I just kept going. And quietly behind the scenes, I was becoming someone she'd never be able to reach again. Not because I was bitter, but because I had outgrown the version of myself who once needed her to believe in him. Now, I believed in me. The day my name started trending, I was wearing a torn hoodie, eating a microwave burrito, and sitting cross-legged on a hardwood floor with no furniture. That's how success shows up sometimes, not with confetti, but in quiet disbelief. It all started with a product launch I didn't think anyone would notice. We had been building toward it for weeks, a refined version of the app with polished features, mobile integration, and a clean, intuitive dashboard. It wasn't revolutionary, but it was ready. And that morning, I hit launch on our first public build. No PR firm, no ad budget, just an email blast, a few tweets, and hope. The first ping came within 20 minutes. New sign-up Claire W. Marketing lead Mid-River Group, a company. Then another, and another. By the end of the first hour, 500 users. By the end of the day, $6,000. My server almost crashed. I was sprinting to keep everything alive. I pulled an all-nighter monitoring the back-end, patching real-time bugs and emailing users personally. But the numbers kept climbing. The next day, a tech blogger wrote a piece titled "The App You Didn't Know You Needed Built by a Guy Delivering Food Last Year." And just like that, Jason Ward was no longer just a guy who got left behind. I refreshed the page so many times I thought my browser would explode. My inbox filled with collaboration requests, podcast invites, DMs from old classmates, people I hadn't heard from in years. One message stood out. Caleb, my college roommate, the one who ghosted after a single hope it works out. Caleb, man, I just saw your app blow up. I knew you had it in you. I didn't reply, not because I was angry, because I had nothing to say. The version of me he once knew had died in silence months ago. The app got picked up by 2 popular newsletters the same week. Twitter was flooded with screenshots and user feedback. A viral productivity influencer posted a walkthrough video of 5 million views in 2 days. Suddenly, people were debating over my UI decisions, quoting my podcast lines, and calling my origin story gritty and cinematic. It was surreal. The guy who used to fall asleep hungry on a cracked couch was now the center of an entire conversation. I was too busy fixing things to enjoy it, but one night I let myself pause. Just for a second, I looked up from the screen and whispered to myself, "They finally see me." And that's when Amelia called, not message called. I stared at the screen as her name flashed. The same name that used to light me up inside now, just a dim reminder of a past I no longer needed. I let it ring out. She texted right after. "Amelia, Jason, can we talk? Just one conversation. I miss you." I muted it. Again, still no hate in my chest, just clarity. Later that week, I gave a live webinar on the product for a tech conference. They asked about my journey, my strategy, my mindset. I told them the truth. I built this alone. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. People left, doors closed, even the ones I loved gave up on me. So I stopped waiting for someone to come save me, and the chat exploded. People said it made them cry, said they felt seen. One comment stuck with me. "This isn't just an app. This guy built a second chance and made it downloadable." After the call, I went outside for the first time in days. The air was cool. I walked past a coffee shop with big windows, people inside tapping away on laptops. 2 tables over, I saw someone using my app. I didn't interrupt, didn't introduce myself. I just stood there for a moment and watched, because that's what I built it for, not to be admired, but used, not to be about me, but about everyone who needed it. And in that moment, I realized I'd already won. It started with a like. Amelia had found my Instagram account, the one I hadn't touched in months, and liked an old photo from over a year ago. One of those vague shots I took in the dark days, captioned, "Keep building, even when no one's watching." The timing wasn't lost on me. That post had sat ignored for months, but now that my name was floating around podcasts and tech blogs, she remembered it existed. She remembered I existed. Then came the message. "Amelia, hey stranger, just saw your app trending." That's amazing. I always knew you had it in you. I sat still for a moment rereading those words. Stranger. That was right. I was a stranger now, even to the version of me she used to know. She followed the message with a little heart emoji, the kind she used to send when she wanted something. At first I didn't reply. I told myself it wasn't worth the emotional energy, but part of me, the part that remembered the cold night she left, felt something rising. Not revenge, not bitterness, just curiosity. What did she want now? 2 days later she messaged again. "Amelia, I'd love to catch up sometime, maybe coffee. No pressure, I'd really like to see you." She ended it with a smiley face. It was surreal. The girl who once stood in my kitchen and said, "I can't waste my time on you," was now asking for mine. I agreed to meet, not out of hope, not even to get closure. I just wanted to see her face when she realized I didn't need her anymore. We met at a cafe downtown, the same one we used to go to back when I was still clinging to the edge of my former life. She had picked it. I hadn't stepped foot in that place since the day I borrowed coins just to afford 1 cup of coffee. She was already there when I arrived, dressed well, makeup on point, like she was walking into an interview. Her eyes widened when she saw me. "You look different," she said almost shyly. I smiled. "Yeah, feels like another lifetime, huh?" She nodded nervously, stirring her iced latte. "I've been following your journey, the app, the podcast, everything. It's just amazing. I mean, you're amazing." That word hung in the air for a moment too long. I sat down and listened. She told me about her new job marketing assistant at a mid-sized agency. She said it was okay, not her dream, but stable. She said she'd broken up with someone recently. She didn't say his name, but I remembered who he was, the guy she got serious with a few weeks after leaving me. The one she used to post about while I was coding on a cracked laptop and eating instant noodles. She leaned forward. "I've been thinking about you," she said. "A lot. I know I hurt you. I didn't know how to stay when things were falling apart. I was scared. I nodded slowly. I get it. Her eyes lit up. Really, I understand why you left, I said. I just don't think you understand what it cost me to survive after you did. She looked down. I didn't expect you to become this, she whispered. That's when I knew. She wasn't here for me. She was here for who I'd become. She tried to paint it as fate. Said maybe this was our second chance. Said she missed how we used to talk late at night. Said she still thought about my laugh, my ideas, the way I made her feel safe. I let her speak. I let her rewind all her old feelings, polish them up like they'd never been abandoned. And then when she paused, waiting for me to reach across the table, I didn't. I looked her in the eye and said, "You left when I was empty. Now you're here when I'm full." She blinked, confused. "That's not a coincidence," I continued. "It's a pattern." She opened her mouth, but I cut her off. "I'm not angry, Amelia. I really do understand. You wanted security. I just wasn't it not then." She looked like she was holding back tears. "But you are now." "Yeah," I said. "Now I'm more than that. And now, I get to choose who gets access to me." I stood up and left money on the table. "For the coffee," I said. "I know how important stability is." She called my name as I walked out, but I didn't turn around. Not out of cruelty, but because that chapter was already closed. She had left the man I was. She didn't get to claim the man I had become. Outside, the sky was starting to shift blue, melting into orange, the kind of sunset you only notice when you finally look up from your grind. I took a breath, long, deep. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free, and that I realized was better than any revenge. When someone leaves you in your darkest moment, they don't expect you to survive. And when you do, when you come back stronger, they think they can just slip into the new version of your life without consequence. Like nothing happened, like you forgot, but I didn't forget. Didn't. Amelia started messaging more after that coffee. Little things, casual, a joke about the weather, a compliment on a tweet I posted, a photo of a dog she said reminded her of the one we used to talk about adopting someday. She never addressed the past again, not directly. Instead, she wore a new mask, sweet, curious, supportive. The kind of person who never walked out of my apartment when I was crying on the kitchen floor. But I remembered. I remembered it all. She invited me to a friend's party one weekend. "I'd love to introduce you to some people," she said. "They've heard me talk about you. They're really impressed." I stared at that message for a long time. Back then, when I was trying to start that first business, the one that crashed before it could fly, I begged her to introduce me to her connections. She always had a reason not to. "It's not the right time. They don't really like people asking for stuff. Let me talk to them first." She never did. And now suddenly I was impressive enough to parade around. Still, I went. Not because I wanted to impress anyone, but because I wanted to see it for myself. I wanted to stand in the middle of the life she had built after me, and see whether she'd ever actually left me behind or just paused me until I became convenient again. The party was loud. Some downtown penthouse filled with art dealer types, startup bros, and wine glasses held like props. Amelia beamed when she saw me, grabbed my arm like we'd never stopped being close, introduced me to 3 people in a row, as, "This is Jason, you have to try his app. He's honestly brilliant." Everyone smiled, everyone nodded, I smiled back, but it felt like I was watching a movie version of myself. And Amelia. She played the part so well, laughing too loud at my stories, touching my arm when she spoke, looking up at me with those same eyes that once looked down on me. It was all so polished, so rehearsed, so fake. Later, she pulled me aside to the balcony. The city lights glowed behind her like a postcard. "I meant what I said, Jason," she said. "I really am proud of you. And I hate how things ended, but maybe it wasn't the end. Maybe we just needed to grow." I looked at her, really looked, and it hit me. She wasn't in love with me. She was in love with the version of me that made her look good now. The successful guy, the comeback story, the proof she could still pick winners. But love doesn't vanish when things get hard. Love stays. Love fights. She hadn't stayed. "I don't think you understand," I said slowly, "what it cost me to become this." She blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean I built this while wondering why I wasn't enough for the people who said they cared. I ate dinner on the floor and coded through tears. I walked through the city in rain with holes in my shoes because no one was answering my messages, not even you." Her face changed. I wasn't yelling. I wasn't cruel, just honest, painfully, surgically honest. "You didn't just leave me." I said. You left me when I was still trying. That's not something I can forget, and definitely not something I can invite back in. She didn't cry. Amelia wasn't the crying type, but she looked away, her jaw tight, her pride cracked just enough for the truth to slip through. I was scared, she whispered. So was I said. But I stayed. We stood in silence, the wind brushing through the balcony railings like static between two radios on different frequencies. Finally I added, "You're not a bad person, but you don't belong in the version of my life that I bled to create." She nodded, not with acceptance, just with understanding that this version of me had become unreachable. I walked back inside, grabbed my jacket, and left without looking back. People say closure comes with softness, a hug, a shared tear, a goodbye with warmth. But sometimes closure is just silence and a closed door. A door you know you'll never walk through again, and more importantly, a door you'll never want to. That night, I walked through the city without music, without distractions. Just me, the cold air, and the knowledge that I had finally faced what used to haunt me. She had a new mask, but I had memory. And more than that, I had peace. This time I was in control, not of the world, not of fate, but of myself, and that was more power than I'd ever known. Amelia didn't message again for a while after that night, and I didn't wait for her to. There was no need for closure, I already had it. The silence wasn't emptiness anymore, it was clarity, and now I was focused on building something far more valuable than revenge freedom. My startup was scaling faster than I'd planned. We crossed 20,000 users within 3 weeks. Small businesses were onboarding entire teams. A productivity platform picked us as one of their top 5 emerging tools. My inbox was flooded with interview requests, integration proposals, and investor interest. But I didn't feel the rush I expected. I wasn't chasing validation anymore. Now I was choosing where to aim my energy. And that shift changed everything. One afternoon, while finalizing an API partnership, I got a message request on LinkedIn from a name I didn't recognize. Rachel T., the assistant to a CEO at a large tech firm Amelia had once gushed about working for. "Hi Jason, our CEO came across your app. He's very impressed. Would you be open to a coffee chat?" I checked the CEO's profile. He followed me, had liked my podcast post 2 days ago. I replied, "Happy to connect. What's the context?" Rachel wrote back. "He's exploring collaborations in your space, and fun fact, he used to date someone you might know, Amelia." I sat back, letting that sink in. So this was it? The circles that once excluded me were now trying to invite me in. The irony wasn't lost on me. That weekend, I agreed to meet, not the CEO, but Amelia. She had asked again, not a date, just a walk. "I feel like I owe you that much." I said yes, not because I needed anything from her, but because I wanted to give her a chance, not at returning to my life, but at finally hearing the truth. We met in the same park we used to visit back when I was nothing more than a man with big ideas and no real outcomes. She wore the same style of coat she had the day she left me. It was almost poetic. She smiled as I approached. "Thanks for coming." I nodded. "You've been thinking about this walk for a while, haven't you?" She laughed nervously. "Is it that obvious I know you?" I said, "or at least I used to." We walked for a while quietly. The air was brisk. Autumn leaves scattered around us like discarded pages of a story that had already been written. "I didn't expect you to take off like this," she finally said. "I mean, I always knew you were smart, but I thought maybe the pressure would break you." It almost did, I admitted, but sometimes pressure's the only thing that turns you into something sharper. She stopped walking. "I know I hurt you, Jason, and I hate how I handled things. I've been carrying that guilt. I just want you to know I'm sorry." I believed her, and I appreciated it, but that didn't mean anything had to change. "Amelia," I said gently, "you made the choice you needed to make. I don't blame you for that, but what you don't get is that what broke me wasn't just you leaving. It was realizing you only saw me as valuable when I was winning." She didn't speak, so I kept going. I could fail tomorrow, lose it all, and end up right back where I was. And if that happened, would you still call me? Would you still want to walk with me in the park? Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "You don't have to answer," I said, because deep down I already know. She tried to argue. She tried to explain how she was younger, then how she was scared and didn't know how to support someone through struggle. But all I heard was a story where I was expected to understand her, while she never really tried to understand me. So I stopped her gently. "I forgive you," I said. Her breath caught. You do, yeah, because I don't carry it anymore. You don't live in my pain now, just my past. And I've got too much ahead of me to keep looking back. She tried one last time. I don't expect you to take me back. I just wish things had been different. I nodded. So do I. I left it at that. Because sometimes mercy is walking away before you say something cruel, and power is knowing you could hurt someone and choosing not to. Later that evening, I got another message from Rachel, the assistant. CEO's available next Thursday. He's offering a 7-figure acquisition if you're open to a discussion. I stared at the message, smiled, and set my phone down. I wasn't ready to sell. Not yet. Because this wasn't just a company I built to flip. It was a life I built to live. On my terms. With no one hovering in the wings waiting to benefit from a version of me they never believed in. This time, I was in control. And I wasn't giving that up for anyone. I didn't plan to confront Amelia again. But life has a funny way of tying loose ends whether you want it to or not. A month after that walk in the park, I was invited to speak on a panel about resilience and entrepreneurship. It wasn't a massive event, just a curated group of founders, mentors, and investors, but it felt like a full circle moment. I sat on stage under warm lights, surrounded by people who'd built companies from garage floors and broken relationships. We talked about burnouts, betrayal, and those silent nights when you wonder if you're the only person still believing in you. The moderator asked, was there a specific moment where you knew you'd made it? I didn't hesitate. When I stopped needing to prove anything to the people who left. The crowd nodded, some clapped. I kept my face still, but my hands clenched slightly under the table, because I meant every word. After the panel, I stepped into the reception area, low lighting, soft music, champagne flutes, and that's when I saw her. Amelia. She wasn't alone. She stood talking to one of the minor investors I recognized from the accelerator circles. She hadn't seen me yet, but I saw her. She laughed politely, hair tucked behind one ear, her voice light and polished. When our eyes finally met, she stiffened. I nodded politely, then turned away. That should have been it. But a few minutes later, I felt a tap on my arm. Jason. Her voice was soft, familiar, hesitant. I turned slowly. Amelia. I didn't know you'd be here. I smiled faintly. Guess that makes us even. I didn't know you were still in these circles. That stung. I could see it in her eyes. I saw your panel, she said. You were incredible. The way you spoke, the honesty, it was powerful. Thanks, I said. She hesitated. Can we talk? I gave her a few seconds of silence before nodding toward a quiet corner of the room. We stood under a low-hanging light, the hum of voices fading around us. I've been following everything she said, every update, every release, every quote. She smiled, but it was tinged with regret. You've built something amazing. You've become someone amazing. I looked at her for a long moment. You know, for a long time, I thought I wanted this exact conversation. I said, I imagined what I'd say, how I'd make you feel everything I went through, how I'd make you regret. Her expression shifted, shame, guilt, a flicker of fear. But now that I'm here, I don't feel any of that. She opened her mouth, but I held up a hand. I just feel sorry that you couldn't see me until I became impossible to ignore. I saw tears rise in her eyes. I didn't know how to be there for you then. You didn't want to be, I said. You wanted the polished version, the success story. You wanted the result, not the process. But I was the process, Amelia. She took a step closer. I've changed, I believe you, I said. But change doesn't always come with second chances. Sometimes it just means we walk away better than we were. Her voice cracked. Do you still love me? It was the question I'd once waited months to hear. But now I shook my head slowly. I love the man I became after you left, and that man doesn't need to chase anyone anymore. She looked away, biting her lip. I gently reached into my jacket and pulled out the old photo she once sent me, the one of our dog idea scribbled on a napkin. I kept this, I said, not because I missed you, but because I needed to remember that everything starts from nothing, even me. I handed it to her. Her hands trembled as she took it. That version of us, I said, it had its time. But that time is over. She nodded. Tears finally fell, quiet, soft. No begging, no pleading, just surrender. I walked away, not triumphant, not cruel, just whole. I didn't look back, not once, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking toward everything I had built without her, and that was my answer. People think the most satisfying part of success is the applause, the headlines, the praise, the spotlight. But that's not how it felt for me. When everything finally came together, when the app was thriving, when the deals were signed, when the interviews went live, what I felt most was silence. Not emptiness, peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you were right to keep going, even when everyone else told you it was over. The kind of peace that doesn't scream for validation, because it is the validation. And with that peace came something else, something harder but necessary: forgiveness. I didn't expect to forgive Amelia, not after everything, not after the way she left without a backward glance, not after she waited until my name had weight before she reached out again. But I did, not for her, not because I wanted her back in my life, and not because she deserved it. I forgave her because holding onto the hurt was like dragging an anchor behind me while I was trying to run. I couldn't afford to carry resentment anymore. Not when I had places to go, not when I had become someone worth being. That forgiveness wasn't a door opening. It was a door closing softly finally behind me. And it wasn't just her. I forgave the friends who disappeared when I had nothing to offer. The ones who only reached out when they saw my follower count go up. I forgave the family members who told me to be realistic, who rolled their eyes when I talked about dreams, who called only when they heard my name mentioned in places they respected. I forgave the investors who rejected me. The ones who said my idea wasn't scalable, or who never responded to my pitch emails. Not because any of them changed, but because I had. There was a time when I wanted revenge. I won't lie about that. I imagined success as a giant billboard of "I told you so." I fantasized about Amelia seeing my name on an App Store homepage and realizing what she walked away from. I imagined the stunned silence of everyone who doubted me. But when those moments actually happened, I didn't feel triumph. I just felt done chasing, done proving, done needing anything from the people who had abandoned me. They weren't villains, they were just background noise, and I had outgrown the need to turn up the volume. I live differently now, not just because of success, but because of what it took to get here. I wake up early, not because I have to, but because I want to. There's still hunger in me, but it's cleaner now, focused. I build because I love what I'm building, not to fill a hole, but to express who I've become. Sometimes I still walk past that cafe where Amelia and I met that last time. I see people laughing at the corner tables, couples holding hands, someone typing on a laptop the way I used to. And it reminds me that life moves forward, whether you're ready or not. The trick is deciding who you're becoming while it moves. Amelia hasn't messaged again. I don't expect her to. I don't need her to. She came back once hoping to fit into the new world I had built, but that world was never made for her. It was made in spite of her absence. It was built from pain isolation and a level of self-belief I never knew I had until she left me. That's something she'll never understand, and that's okay, because I do. People ask me now, what's your proudest moment? They expect me to say, launching the app, or getting that first major deal, or being featured in some magazine. But honestly, it was none of that. My proudest moment was walking away from someone I once begged to stay with grace, with calm, and with no need to prove anything anymore. My proudest moment was choosing peace over payback, because that's the real victory, not getting even but getting free. I still remember who I was when this started, the guy sleeping on a stained couch with blisters on his fingers from delivery shifts, the guy who flinched at the sound of the door slamming behind the person he thought loved him. That guy built the man I am now. So yes, I forgive, but I never forget, because forgetting would mean erasing the very foundation I stand on today. I'm not here to be a role model, I'm not perfect, but if there's one thing I want you to take from this story, it's this. Sometimes the people who leave you in the dark are the very reason you learn to shine. Don't chase them, don't hate them, just build something they can never touch. And when they come back, smile, not because you want them again, but because you don't need them at all.